Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Okay, where there's gaming, there's going to be controversy, and last year was no exception. In fact, it really was quite controversial indeed. So, what can we learn? And importantly, what should we be on the lookout for this year? Well, today I'm going to answer just that. And if you're new, hello. On this channel, we publish 6 gaming news and analysis videos a week, sometimes more. So if you'd like more of that, be sure to like, sub, and ring that bell. And with that said, let's get into the video. Activision Blizzard had a PR-riddled year. It was really a disaster, almost comical how badly it went for them. Of course, though, much of it was their own fault. The year kicked off with Bungie's split from Activision and the selling of self-publishing rights of the Destiny franchise, leaving quite a hole in their portfolio. Now, players were happy for Destiny 2 to be free of Activision's influence, while Bungie employees were reportedly cracking open the champagne at the announcement. Now, from what we understand, Activision Blizzard was enforcing a business model that Bungie didn't necessarily want for the game, and they also tied Bungie down to a release schedule that was very much driven by their own needs for quarterly earnings. So it's no surprise that Destiny sharply pivoted to a free-to-play model after that split. There was then, that 1 week in February where they just decided, hey, guess what? We've got record results, in 2018. Oh, and also, we're going to lay off nearly 800 people. Yep, Bobby Kotick certainly did cement his villainous image. Of course, through that, combined with his multi-million-dollar salary and the extreme value of the assets he also gets in his compensation package, while J. Allen Brack over at Blizzard attempted to save face. Not that it really worked. Perhaps they just underestimated WoW Classic's performance and, thought, we just don't have the money this year, we'll have to get rid of those people. And certainly in the World of Warcraft side, we've been feeling the hit from the staff losses. The Blizzard community team is less staffed than ever, which makes running my other channel quite a bit harder, and they seemingly have big QA issues, and these things can be directly tied back to that incident, plus the ongoing issues that Blizzard have faced. And then, of course, who can forget the Blitzchung incident? The fallout ranged from boycotts to even staff walkouts at the Blizzard campus to a letter from the US Congress. Certainly quite a situation. Blizzard scrambled to justify their position before J. Allen Brack's completely lackluster apology at BlizzCon in November, but by then the damage was done and they never really saved face. What can we learn from all of this? Well, a company that seems disastrously out of touch probably is disastrously out of touch. We certainly can, follow the money regarding the influence of the Chinese market on their decision-making, and we can also see the impact of short-term decision-making. Activision Blizzard are notorious cost-cutters compared to others in the industry, and that's what led to those record earnings, but also the loss of all of those jobs. And during 2019, I continue to hear bad things from people that I know who are familiar with the company, so it does seem like there's really not that much real change going on there. 2019 and 2020 already provide us, though, with another excellent counterexample. Ubisoft. Faced with a stagnant library and the failing of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, what do? Well, they announced sweeping delays, tanking their stock price, and they revamped their creative team, seemingly all to meet customer feedback. That is a good move, and it is one that is very much unlike Activision Blizzard. So overall, when you see a company being out of touch, well, you've got to let them know and make the appropriate decision yourself. In a case like with Ubisoft, you can see that the market rejected their previous vision, and they were forced to respond, and ideally, that's how things should be working. 2019 was also the year of the exclusive, truly becoming a dirty word, mostly thanks to the Epic Games Store. The Epic Games Store's dedication to marketing itself as a pro-developer Steam killer may have worked for some devs, and certainly does have great positives to it, but it was certainly less good for potential customers. We've since seen their core stats, and as it turns out, well, content is king, and people did sign up to it in spite of all the drama. And I think this is a big lesson for the next gen. Content is king, and you'll see this play in the Sony versus Microsoft strategies, where Sony very obviously are doing their usual thing of lots of big exclusives, but Microsoft only have 1 or 2 for the Xbox Series X. And those are also going to be backwards compatible with the current Xbox hardware, which certainly is a surprising move. I think another thing that it shows us is that really middlemen have to have the content if their business is actually going to work, and in this case they were able to use those Fortnite dollars to just get a whole bunch of content secured, even though it was obviously in a way that pissed off many potential customers. And I've got to wonder if that is going to be something that really will slow them down as we move forward into another year, where they're not going to have, I assume, maybe not going to have tentpole titles like, say, Borderlands 3 to really bolster their numbers. I mean, I've got to imagine that Borderlands 3 was a massive driver of growth for the Epic Games Store, and if they're not going to be able to have similar hits like that, then their growth, I imagine, is going to slow down from what seemed to be a decent decently explosive first year. Of course, one that was driven by a lot of chaos. And that is a lot of chaos that turned sort of into more of a cultural wave. Customers were a little bit pissed off with Epic for their lack of features and, going through exclusives. But then, a lot of the media likes to dunk on the actual gaming audience, and this all just turned into a terrible situation where the quality of discourse in gaming just absolutely plummeted. And of course, discussion is the way that we solve things, that we move forward, and that ultimately is the greatest casualty of what Epic decided to do and the way they decided to do it. We can't talk about controversy in gaming without covering monetization, but 2019 was a bit different. I think it was the year that people started to really say no. The gaming public is jaded, we're a wary bunch, and it's heartening to know that there is actually a limit of what people will end up accepting. What is, however, still quite upsetting is how limited it is to just core gamers. Now, we as players have rather been conditioned to blithely accept monetization these days, within reason. I think we've grown to understand that for some of those live service games, they rely on some microtransactions, sometimes even loot boxes, in order to remain profitable. That's just a part of their business model. Now, that's something we're not particularly happy about, but I think a lot of people have ended up, just because of time, sort of accepting it. But still, 2019 pushed its luck in a few instances. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, that was a faithful remake of a beloved childhood racer for many people, and it was plagued by shoehorned in microtransactions. NBA 2K20 was a gambling simulator that begrudgingly had a basketball game put inside it. And of course, the less that is said about Ghost Recon Breakpoint and its time savers, the better, and what Ubisoft has generally done, forcing microtransactions into their other single-player games like Assassin's Creed. But while there was a lot of bad stuff, we also had some baby steps in the right direction. But of course the question is, will it be enough? PUBG and Rocket League both dropped randomized loot crates, though, it didn't really go to plan for Rocket League. Yes, they replaced their key system with a direct purchase store, and that is a good move for transparency, but, a sort of not ideal thing is they also hiked up a whole bunch of prices. They eventually were forced to revert that. So, core gamers, I think, are getting really, really tired of this stuff. And what does that mean? Well, it means the core gamers are going to be less profitable. Now, I think core gamers will still be a good enough size of the market that they're still worth catering to, but for a lot of the big companies who, just want to get the cash in, well, I've got to imagine that core gamers are not going to be the sort of audience they'll be aiming for, because at the end of the day, I don't want to say that they're too smart, but they're less able to, or they're less willing to be sort of hooked on by a lot of these Skinner boxes. And I think you're really going to see that. You're going to see more casual games that are focusing more on the microtransactions, and that's just going to be an ongoing theme. At the end of the day, if most of us vote with our wallets, then companies will just be like, well, okay, you voted for your wallet. We're just going to go and cater to somebody who doesn't vote with their wallet and who is going to purchase our microtransactions. So I think that is something for us all to watch out for and to be very keenly looking at as we move into the next year. And next, a rather surprising one that I think nobody asked for and really nobody expected: subscription services. Mario Kart Tour's Gold Pass and Fallout 76's Fallout First are probably the two most egregious examples of this happening. Fallout First, of course, is a premium and expensive way to access some features that were actually shown in reveal trailers, which is a little bit odd, while Mario Kart Tour locks the entire multiplayer component of the game behind a hefty paywall, which is pretty absurd. Recurring revenue sure is a good thing for companies, especially because when people are signed into a recurring revenue thing, they're going to feel more dedicated to the game. They're kind of locked into the purchase. And being an MMO player, it certainly is funny for me seeing subscriptions make their way back into buy-to-play and free-to-play games. Now, of course, though, the point of this video is to analyze, right? To see what we can actually learn from this. And, it's really simple with this one. Diversification. Box price, microtransactions, subscription services that price-wise are basically just there to give you a good deal in premium currency. No company wants to have all of their eggs in one basket, and if they can find an excuse to add a new business model to their game, they absolutely will. And one of the things about subscription services is, if the subscription service looks like it's a really good deal for, say, the gems or whatever the premium currency is, then people feel like they're getting a good deal for doing the subscription, and that's going to drive a lot of people towards it. But at the same time, by, giving people a little teaser amount of that currency, it also feeds straight back into the microtransaction store. So it actually is them, diversifying their business model, but having a lot of loops between aspects of their business model to get more revenue out of the people that ultimately, will be hooked in by the sort of free-to-play styled premium currency microtransactions microtransactions that often do come with a lot of the modern subscription services. Terrible launch dates. With the advent and the prevalence of day one patches, games are now seemingly under less pressure to perform perfectly on launch day. And while this affords peace of mind to a few devs, I suppose, or publishers, I think 2019 showed us that actually bad things can happen here. Now, many people are quick to blame the actual developers for this, but in reality, the developers of games don't actually set the deadlines. I mean, yeah, imagine the people, they're doing the work, they know the work, but they're not getting to set the deadlines. That's a terrible situation. And that is the case in many instances, with developers crunching hard only for players to feel like the games have been rushed out by people who don't care. And I don't think that's true. I think it is those obsessed with quarterly earnings that are running pro-crunch studios that are to blame here, often sacrificing the long-term health of even their business, but also their games and their employees for the sake of short-term gain. There's Anthem, Mortal Kombat 11, WWE, 2K20, Fallout 76. They all released in utterly broken states, and the PC version of Red Dead Redemption 2 was so wonky on release that even getting the darn thing to run was pretty much an accomplishment in and of itself. Borderlands 3 was in a similar state in PC, of course, with the extra spice that comes with being on the Epic Games Store. What are we to learn here? I mean, it's pretty darn simple. It all comes to short-term over long-term and how developers end up being the people who pay the price in the work environment and how, customers end up paying the price in the consumer market. Overall, it's a terrible situation. And yes, it's driven by companies prioritizing their quarterly earnings. Look, if EA pushed Anthem back 6 months, would it have been a great game? Probably not. Would it have had all of its launch issues? Well, maybe some of them, but probably not a lot of them. And maybe the developers who are making that game, who cared about that game, who wanted it to actually release in a good state for their customers, maybe they would have had a little bit more time to actually make the game good. But no, EA wanted to boost that quarter, and that certainly is what they did. Of course, to the damage of their own business long term, and to the damage of BioWare and the people who worked on that game. And then there's Google Stadia, the console that's not a console, but, sort of costs almost as much as one, especially with its subscription service, and doesn't run games as well. Quite a situation. Its release was so premature that half its features were missing, and the number of launch titles, changed the week of the launch, and it's consistently failed to live up to its own marketing hype. An absolute disaster. It is proof that Google do not understand core gamers. This is not a product for core gamers, for people who really enjoy games, and even for people who want a more value-oriented decision, who can't afford buying a console. If you check out this video that we did at the start of the year, we actually broke down how doing Stadia plus the Stadia subscription for some of the free games and having decent enough internet to be able to generally use Stadia in a good state in a regular household, how that's actually a hell of a lot more expensive than just getting an Xbox One all-digital edition, some games in Game Pass. An absolute disaster. Past Stadia, though, streaming itself has been an obvious trend in the market. Everyone's going for it. EA even have their own little project going, Sony have been doing it for ages, and Microsoft's xCloud is a massive bet. But really the difference here is that Microsoft and Sony, I think, understand the strengths here. They don't see it as a replacement, a way that, is gaming not on a console. They see it as an addition to their business model, expanding their market and actually being an additive thing for their customers. Because if you're an Xbox customer and you've got xCloud, then guess what? It's just a value add for all the things you already own. That is how to use streaming, and that certainly is not how Google have decided to approach streaming. And then finally, some honorable mentions. Nintendo Switch's Joy-Con drift. Quite a mistake, and seemingly not one that's been resolved that well. We've got Fallout 76's moldy helmet and, other merch issues. Borderlands 3, the review codes, they weren't really going out evenly. Dexit, we all remember that, the National Dex, it ran away, only for the next 2 Pokemon DLCs, to bring back 200 Pokemon that you know and love from past games. Quite a nice move from a business perspective, I think we can all agree. We then got E3 becoming less relevant and them also doxing basically all the journalists and streamers. That was a bit of a mistake. And on streamers, well, a lot of them jumped ship to Mixer. Some of them signed exclusivity deals for Twitch, actually. Others for YouTube Gaming. Quite an interesting situation, but personally, I'm not really a big stream person, so I've got to admit, I don't really care that much. That said, it doesn't seem like Mixer's doing that well. And it's that sort of thing where you kind of go where the people are. But that said, if Twitch is a monopoly, then that's obviously bad for the health of the industry, and it's obviously bad for competition. Then I think Sekiro's lack of an easy mode also does come up here. Personally, I think that's their creative decision, and I respect them for sticking with it. Wolfenstein Youngblood, another incredible example of a game that decided to RPGify itself a bit more than it needed to, and also shoehorn in some co-op multiplayer, and then basically have not that many missions, a whole bunch of content so dull it almost feels procedurally generated when you're going around Paris, and really, it is such a pity for a franchise, or a renewable franchise, that started off so strong, but then ended up falling so far with that entry. Truly something that should be a wake-up call to both developer and publisher. Then we've touched on Anthem. Honestly, we've talked it to death, but basically everything to do with Anthem, I think, deserves an honorable mention here. That said, props to them for actually sticking with it, and hopefully within 2020, we will see that big revamp of the game that, could actually do sort of well. And then finally, the Rockstar Launcher, something that proves that yes, everyone does want a vertically integrated business model where they are developing the games, publishing the games, and owning the platform where you purchase the games, meaning they don't have a whole bunch of revenue splits. But unfortunately this time, it didn't really come in the most pro-consumer way, with them actually staggering the release of Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC to maximally drive it towards their platform, but of course those who purchased it on their platform got the worst performing, the buggiest, the most problem-ridden version of the game, which certainly is not how you should be treating the customers who are willing to go onto your platform as early adopters. And with that, that is our wrap-up of 2019's major controversies, and most importantly, the key themes that we can tease out of them, the ways we can analyze what direction the games industry is going in, and how we can map that onto the future, giving us a list of things that we can actually be on the lookout for as we enter this new year and this new decade. And with that, let me know what are your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like more of the content that we do here, release 6 videos a week, that is our goal, then, sub, like, ring that bell, it helps us out a great deal. And with that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.